Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a rarely seen side of Scott's Emporiums. This is the most famous of them all, the Grand Am Emporium. And we're gonna cut this little guy up. Now, most people are gonna look at this thing and say that it's total junk. And they're kind of right, but there still is a little bit of value left in this car. I've had it for, I don't know, probably 7 years, and it's been sitting in the corner, but I need some parts off of it, and there isn't much left, so it's time to get rid of this and make room for some new inventory. And by new, I just mean new to me. It's probably going to be another Grand Am if we're being realistic. So what's actually left on this car that we can use? Well, the front end structures has a use right now. The engine is still good. It's got 129,000 miles on it, which really isn't that bad for these. Still got a couple wheels left, and our wiper transmission, which is a common failure on these. And I think that might be about it. And it does run, believe it or not, even though it's been sitting for 7 years at the bottom of a pile. Literally, there were cars stacked on top of it. Before we can get to our parts that are way down there, we're gonna have to empty our dump trailer. It's not that full, but I need to put all the aluminum in it. And that's that pile right there. Maybe it's also time to let go of that GTO. And I know we have trust issues, so let me go ahead and start it for you to prove that it does run. Well, maybe it doesn't anymore because it's puking gas. Okay, I'll show you the old video of it running because it did run. But I'm not wasting more time on this thing. I've actually had this thing for so long that I bought it at a low time in the auction. Back, I think before the scrap guys really even got involved in it or just weren't paying attention. I paid 75 bucks for this car. After auction fees and everything, it was like less than $150 out the door, which you can't even buy a $150 car anymore, and auction fees are double that. So yeah, it was actually a pretty good deal. The catalytic converter is gonna literally pay for the rest of the car. I bought it because I wanted the roof skin and the sunroof assembly so that I could convert a non-sunroof car to a sunroof car. It also needed all the drain tubes and a headliner and all that stuff. So, but other than that, it's pretty much plug and play. So that's why I bought it. I ended up using the airbags, all the front end sheet metal. I sold some wheels and tires, and I have the doors. They were all rotted out, but I did save them because I sell the regulators and the glass all the time, or I use it myself. The only damage on the car was actually that rear quarter, but it was pretty rusty when I got it, and it's only gotten worse. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of it now. And well, I'm just going to time lapse this because, well, it's the fastest way to do it, and this is just a quick video for you guys to see the other side of Scott's Emporiums that you don't normally see. And this is actually my favorite part of rebuilding cars, taking them all apart. So let's get this thing apart. We pull our wheels off first, and we'll disconnect our tie rod ends that we might need to hang on to break them loose because there's nylon nuts in there and they're pretty rusty. So we want to get that done when the suspension is still all together in case we need to struggle. And it wasn't so bad, so we pulled our calipers off, our knuckles, and our drive axle nuts off. We can go ahead and start disconnecting our starter, pull the starter out of there, and get to our torque converter bolts, which is a lot easier to do now than when the engine's sitting on a stand on the floor. So we're going to get all the underneath stuff done. Unbolt all of our engine mounts from our subframe. We can remove a few of the smaller bolts out of the subframe. Then go up top and start disconnecting all of our cables and lines and hoses. Disconnect our AC line, pull our air box out of there. We can pull our radiator hose off, pull our fuse box off, which is also a junction block for all of our wiring harnesses. Nice and convenient. We can disconnect our heater hoses, which are slightly less convenient. Reach way back there into Narnia and get to the fuel lines. Some engineer thought that was a good place to put them. And now our engine's ready to drop out of here. We can start unbolting everything from our cowl so we can get our dash out of here. Save our wiper transmission. Disconnect our heater box. Couple bolts on our dash. And our whole dash assembly comes out with the heater box and everything. Pull our rear suspension out.
We're not going to use anything back here, but the rear knuckles are aluminum, so we're going to save those, put them in a separate pile because they're worth a little bit more money. And then we'll drop the rear subframe down. That way we can drop the exhaust out of here, just to make cutting the car up a little bit easier. And we'll drop the gas tank to get some of that liquid gold out of there. Maybe save a couple bucks because I'm cheap. Even though it's old, our beater Grand Am will still run on it. And we're going to pull our heater box apart so we can get our evap core and heater core. And now that it's all stripped down, you can see why this thing wasn't worth fixing. It's got that salt belt weight reduction kit. This is the stage 4 weight reduction with the rocker delete package. And this rocker is completely deleted. Good thing they put that plastic over it to cover it up. Unfortunately, a lot of our cars start to look like this after a few years. The engines may last, the transmissions may last, but the salt just eats the bodies and there's not much you can do about it. That inspection port isn't supposed to be there. But our front frame rails are still good. They don't rot out like these rockers, so we'll be able to use that. Won't be able to use these brake and fuel lines. They didn't make it. They always rot out in the same spot, right here at this bend. And then all the way across the back. There's quite a bit of Grand Am all over the floor there. Maybe I should package it up and sell it as a DIY kit. Build your own Grand Am. And we got a few more parts laying over here. So now we're going to separate our knuckles from our backing plate and hub and everything else. Everything else is going in the pile. We're just wanting the aluminum knuckles. And our socket didn't make it. Oh, we're forced to go get our Harbor Freight socket and warranty the snap-on one. Don't know what that says about the quality of tools, but, well, there you go. It is what it is. And it should just fall out of here, but with all that corrosion, it's going to take a little bit of persuading. Tap, tap, tap-a-roo. I even got an actual hammer for this job. There we go. I win. In the pile. We'll unbolt the hub from our other one. That one needed a lot less persuading. And in the pile. Now we need to separate our engine and trans from our subframe. The subframe's rotted out, so it's junk. So we'll pull our drive axles out first. Since our engine is sitting down on that drive axle, we gotta pry it up a little bit, wedge a 2x4 underneath it, and we tap that drive axle out of there with the appropriate hammer, of course. Fun fact, both right and left drive axles on Grand Ams are the same, except the right drive axle does have that little snout that clips onto it. And because this one wants to fight me, it came with the drive axle. It doesn't always. So we got it out of there, we'll leave it on there. That way it's ready to put in a drive axle on the right side, should we have another one that comes out like that. And we can unbolt our ball joint and then unbolt our wheel hub. Then use our specifically designed electrical connector disconnector. Disconnect our wires and then tap that hub out of there. Not that we needed to, the electrical part of the hub stayed in the knuckle. It's a little corroded in there. Disconnect the wire on this side. And we can unbolt our hub. I have plenty of these. Hubs are cheap. I just use new ones instead of used ones. But we want the aluminum knuckle to throw in a different pile because it's worth quite a bit more than the metal. And somebody's been here before. That one came out way too easy. We can take off what's left of our catalytic converter. And these bolts are pretty rusty. So rather than trying the impact, which I knew wasn't going to work, because I tried it and it didn't work, we'll use a breaker bar. Scott power is greater than electric power. I'm just taking it off here so it's easier to store our engine without this massive pipe attached to the back of it. And that's where our cat used to be. It looks like we had a friend chewing on our wiring harness. That's probably why I wouldn't start the second time for you. One of those wires goes down to the crank position sensor. Now we're going to unplug our wiring harness. We'll pull this trans mount out of here and toss that in a pile. Make it easier to store our transmission. I'll try to get this plug off of here that's full of 20 years of dirt. We're going to need our specially designed trim clip electrical connector disconnector tool. Break it free and slide it off of there. Start popping the rest of the wiring harness off. We'll pull our cooling back so we can get to our trans cooler lines. There's just one 10mm nut that holds both lines on. Just a little wiggle and pull. Pull the trans lines out of that lower radiator support clip. And our cooling's ready to come out. With the exception of one wire that doesn't want to let go. Going to unbolt our AC line from our compressor. We might need this for our other job. Disconnect the wiring harness off the front of our engine. Now we need to disconnect our power steering lines from the rack and pinion, because our rack and pinion is going to stay with the subframe. For that, we're just going to use a wrench and our size 10.5 breaker. Once they break loose, they spin out by hand. Just getting them loose. And we'll try to get most of the power steering fluid in the bucket. The shop turtles can drink the rest if they're thirsty. There is a drain pan down there, I promise. And now our engine and trans is ready to come out of here. The rack and pinion, the subframe, everything on the cart is going in the garbage, so there was no need to take it apart any further. Control arms, the sway bar link, I have all that stuff. So we're tossing that in the pile just like it is. We'll dump our subframe off of our cart. And we can throw our cart back underneath our engine and trans. And that's why we disconnected our torque converter from our flex plate when it was up in the air, because once we set it down on this cart, it's going to be a lot harder to work underneath it. And of course, when we set it down on this cart, you could be sure that those wiring harnesses are going to end up underneath the engine and trans, because it's just my luck. I'm not even going to fight it. So we'll set it down on our wiring harness. So now we're going to get the car out of the way. Can't guarantee we're going to do it without any damage, but we're definitely going to do it the most efficient way possible. Mobile frame rack comes in handy. Take this outside to cut it up and finish tearing apart our engine. You guys thought the wheel loaders did a lot of damage at the auction. Ah, look at me go. Now we're going to separate the engine and trans. We got a bracket down here with a bolt that comes up from the bottom. That I probably should have taken it off when the car was up in the lift, but we'll get it. Bolt the rest of our bracket. We can pull this engine mount off the front, or trans mount actually. There's some bolts hidden behind it and some ground wires. Unbolt our ground wires. Pull the rest of the wiring harness out of there. And we can start unbolting all the bolts that go through the bell housing. And the impact doesn't want to take it off. So we're going to go get our 10.5 breaker, break it loose, and then spin it right out of there. It looks like our friends chewing on our wires brought some bags with them. Got a ground wire in the back here. We're going to pull off the stud. And then we can get the studs out of there for the rest of our bell housing bolts. We'll pull this trans mount out of here, just so it's a little easier to put on the shelf. And our engine and trans are ready to come apart. Of course, they're friends and they don't want to leave each other. Try a little wiggle. That's not going to work. Going to need a little more persuasion. This long hammer should do it. And they're separated. They're going on different shelves. That's why we had to separate them. Pull our wiring harness out of here. Told you it was going to get stuck underneath the trans. That's going in a separate pile. Actually, we're going to leave it with the engine for right now. We'll take it off later and toss it in the pile. Sure our torque converter is all the way in there. It doesn't start leaking all over the place. We'll go put our engine on a pallet and go put it over in Scott's Grand Am Emporium. Now we're going to cut our front end assembly off. Get ready for our other job. And there's the famous train, one of the many. So we start with cutting through the A-pillars. There is a method to my madness here. You start at the top and work your way down. Cut through the A-pillars first, then cut down through the rockers. The reason we do that is we have the weight of the front end hanging over the edge, so it opens up the gap from the top down, and it doesn't pinch our saw blade as we're cutting it. So once we get through the rockers, we just need to cut through the floor. It's fine until we get to the rails at the edge. That's where our strength is. One last rail, and if we don't get the sawzall pinched in here, we'll be good. And our front end is free. We'll save that. The rest of this is going in the pile.
So we have our Grand Am and a terrain and a bunch of other parts loaded up in our dump trailer that we rebuilt quite a while ago. One of the greatest rebuilds I ever did because it's been super useful. So let's head over to the scrapyard and dump it all out and see how much we get for it.
So before I was able to find a good deal on a rebuildable dump trailer, I used to use my plow truck that had an 8-foot bed on it. I used to unload everything by hand once it was in the back of the bed, which took way longer than this, and I could only store maybe 1/10 of the scrap in the bed of that truck. This thing holds at least 10 times as much, and I just wait till it's full, or I need to switch out the materials in it, and then I go dump it out. And it takes a lot less work to unload it. Easier on me because, well, I'm getting old. Instead of coming here once a month, I might come here once every 6 months. Press a button and dump it out. We're just going to dump everything out here. That machine that the grapple is putting all of the scrap in will put everything, it'll shred everything up and then separate all the different copper and aluminum and steel. It's one of two of those machines that are in the country, I guess. So a lot of people come from miles around to dump their scrap here. It just happens to be convenient for me because it's right down the street. That was so much easier than hand unloading everything. Make sure everything's out of there and close up our doors. And I'm about to find out we have a little work to do on our dump trailer. The lever for the lock has been cracked for, I don't know, probably since I got the thing, and it finally broke. So now we have no way to really lock it other than locking the two doors together. So it doesn't close tight anymore. We'll just change that lock. We'll do that another time. Maybe I'll make a video on that.
What's your guess? How much did I get for all of that scrap? I guess you need a little more information so you can make an educated guess. Right now, the scrap price for sheet steel, which is what that was, is $180 a ton. So now you just need to figure out how much was there. Well, there were a little over 3.5 tons. So I ended up leaving there with a check for $640 for everything that was in that dump trailer. Not bad for just some leftover garbage. So this was the side of Scott's Grand Am Emporium, actually all of his emporiums, because that's where all of my stuff goes. When I'm done with it, I've taken everything I need out of it and I get rid of it. So I'm still making a little money on the leftover junk. If you want to see more videos on the part side of my business, which actually kind of caters to my rebuild business, let me know and I can make more videos for you like that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take sh I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take sh I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.